Dear representatives of the media, happy to greet you all here in Tallinn, and I will be very happy to welcome my fellow EU defense ministers, High Representative Mogherini, Jens Stoltenberg, Secretary General of NATO, here in Tallinn. We will have three very important issues to be discussed. First, it's cyber defense. And we will run a tabletop exercise called Cyber 2017. We will put the defense ministers to a figurative situation where they would have to address political issues connected to the cyber defense of an EU operation. You are never prepared for any kind of attack. But I think this exercise will show to the ministers how important it is to be prepared, both from the political point of view and from the technical point of view. We are not creating programmers from the ministers, but we want them to understand that these quickly developing situations could demand quick political decisions. That's the idea of the exercise.
Well, please, let's make it. That's the first time I participate in the cyber exercise with the European Union, and I'm also glad to announce that NATO has decided to upgrade the EU participation in our cyber exercise, which is going to take place later on this year. It's called Cyber Coalition, and it's one of the biggest cyber exercises in the world. We are faced with many challenges in the cyber domain. Over the last year, we saw a 60% increase in the number of cyber attacks against NATO networks. And it is important that we work together with the European Union to defend also our allies and our members against many different kinds of cyber attacks.
Then we'll address the Sahel and Horn of Africa problems. There's no doubt that this is a crisis area which brings both terrorism and illegal immigration to Europe. And we'll focus on the issue of how to comprehensively address this problem, both from the civilian side of EU and from the military side of EU. And finally, it's PESCO. We want to have a very inclusive PESCO organization, and we'll hope as many EU countries as possible will join it. We would want every EU country who is ready to join feel comfortable with PESCO. We very much hope so that when the Estonian Presidency concludes in December, PESCO will be ready to go. For Estonia, it's very important that one commitment the ministers would make is the commitment to 2% of GDP for defense spending. This might not be possible for everybody, but I think to have a strong defense, we need more resources, more capabilities, so that the EU defense would have an added value.
Just 1 year after the informal defense ministers in Bratislava, where we started discussing the strengthening of defense cooperation in the European Union, today we would be ready to launch the permanent structured cooperation and the European Defence Fund by the end of the year under the Estonian Presidency. So from this meeting today, I would expect a very strong indication by the defence and foreign ministers that member states are ready to go. And from our side, we would be ready to prepare everything by the end of the Estonian Presidency. So I would say that this is a major achievement in just 1 year. Last year, we were very far away from this. It seemed to be quite unrealistic, and I think we've done a remarkable European common work. For the moment, just to give you a sense of the interest that member states have shown in this, we have already received proposals for more or less 30 projects that could be developed under permanent structured cooperation. So I believe that this is really going well, on a good track, and with a lot of active involvement from all member states. Most of all, we will have another time a point on North Korea, DPRK. Already in July, the European Union took a very firm and united position. Today we are facing a different level of threat that is clearly a threat to global peace and security and to the entire non-proliferation regime. I would propose to ministers today to strengthen the economic pressure on North Korea, supporting a new UN Security Council resolution adopting tougher economic measures, studying new autonomous European Union sanctions on North Korea, and working with other partners in the world to make sure that everybody implements fully and strictly the already decided economic measures. Our European line is very clear on this: more economic pressure, more diplomatic pressure, unity with the regional and international partners we have. I discussed this with the ministers of Republic of Korea and Japan, and obviously with the IEA and the CTBTO just a couple of days ago. Avoiding to enter into the spiral of a military confrontation that could be extremely dangerous not only for the region but for the entire world. The European Union has always been convinced that economic pressure alone is never sufficient. That is why from our side we have always offered our regional, international partners, the international community and even the DPRK the path of dialogue, credible, meaningful for the denuclearization of the peninsula, that we believe should happen in peaceful manner through dialogue and diplomatic means. And we believe that more economic pressure in this respect, more diplomatic pressure in this respect, could make a difference.
As you see, we have a nice Estonian summer weather. Usually it's much worse than that. But nonetheless, I hope for a very constructive round of discussions. We will kick off the meeting with a joint session of the foreign and defense ministers, obviously discussing the future of European defense cooperation. We will also be discussing the Middle Eastern peace process, the situation between Israel and Palestine, and we will be discussing the European Union's policy regarding human rights in EU's relations with third countries. We will also be discussing our own internal working methods with a focus on how to maintain EU unity in various international organizations. And the foreign ministerial meeting will be finished by a meeting with the colleagues from the candidate countries and with the ministers of the candidate countries. We will be discussing the fight against violent extremism.
Thank you. That's all.